Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. This is going to be something of a perfunctory recent reads video. My last recent reads video covered books that I completed last year. So this will be the first 4 books that I have finished so far this year. I know other booktubers at the end of January, they said, here's the 17 books I read. Well, not so with me. I say perfunctory because in most cases I've said everything I care to say at this point about the books in question, and don't see any great reason to repeat too much. Now, this is Disinherited by Dale Van Every, a book I heard about from booktuber, those are love bites, Steve Donahue, and it's an excellent look at the processes by which Native Americans were evicted from their dwellings east of the Mississippi. It did not go beyond that time very much, but it really told in good detail with good contemporary documents drawn upon how the white citizenry of the United States evicted the Native Americans. So that was the first book that I finished. I was also reading War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. Not in this translation. I was reading the Maud translation. I will be getting rid of this shortly. And it's a marvelous novel, even though Tolstoy did not consider it to be a novel, apparently. I am now reading a book of criticism edited by Harold Bloom, which in due course, if I finish it, I will have something more to say. Then the next book that I finished was the Lumumba Plot by Stuart, Reid, and I thought it was a very good introduction to the story of Patrice Lumumba and the way he was gotten out of the picture by Belgium specifically, but really all of the white folks that didn't like his presence there. They thought somebody else would be better, and of course it's a moot point. You can't say that Mobutu was better, but it happened the way it happened. So lastly, I will talk about, well, not this, I read this book last year, a book about cephalopods, which I spoke negatively about last year when I read it, Peter Godfrey-Smith. I had some little quibbles with turns of phrases that he had. Oh yeah, this was one. The turning. I assume he's talking about a cephalopod here. Unfussed and deliberate, looks like a dance from the court of some civilized French king. Well, who knows what the dancing in the court of a civilized French king was looking like. But I understand a little better now why he was going into such figurative language, simply because it's hard to report some of these things. So when I read that, being critical of it, I thought, well, perhaps the problem was that Peter Godfrey-Smith was a philosopher and not a scientist. And I investigated a little further, and I found out that Montgomery had written a very popular book, Soul of an Octopus. So you can see it's obviously been something of a fad. And I thought, well, she is reputed to be a biologist. She probably will do the better book, and and his was just something that was slapped together to catch the momentum of this. Well, I was completely wrong, actually. So I will talk a little bit more in detail about this. I'm not going to do a separate review for it. And I will possibly offend people by not liking a book. I believe the booktube community prefers to be positive and effusive, but in this case, I don't feel that way. I actually learned a lot more of the science here. Now, for Montgomery's favor, you have to say that I learned things here that possibly were duplicated, although I didn't see an awful lot of overlap. But he really, in his first chapters, I think the first 3 or 4 chapters, really gave a marvelous overview of the science of cephalopods. When I think about it, really outstanding. As he talks about how, in a Darwinian sense, life evolved from the earliest forms. She does not go into any of that. And quite the opposite to what I was thinking. This book is not very good about the science. You do learn some things about it, but mainly, and I will refer to the author in a pejorative phrase which has become popular in recent years, but I don't think it was in use at the time that this book was written. Well, maybe I shouldn't do that. Well, you'll hear it if I do. It was popping in my mind whilst I was reading it. So the first 5 chapters of this are pretty worthless. It's essentially a book about what it's like to go to an aquarium. And then secondarily, you could say what it's like for people who work in an aquarium, what their lives are like, and the kind of chit-chat that they have. And when you're at an aquarium, there's probably 5 or 6 different scenes where the school buses have brought the children in, and the children are pointing to one of the sea creatures, octopus or otherwise, and saying something that, that a little 7-year-old might say about an octopus. And it's all reported in great detail. You learn about everybody who is behind the scenes at the aquarium, what their likes and dislikes are outside of the aquarium, what their family relations are like, what their past histories of different kinds of problems are. Very little actually dealing with the octopus. And then at some point, the author, Cy Montgomery, decides to take scuba diving lessons. And so you have a chapter devoted to that. So what it is like being a scuba diving student, and then what it's like to be a novice scuba diver. Sometimes somebody in the book, in the class, puts on their wetsuit inside out, and something is not fitting right, and all of the foibles that can happen when you are learning how to scuba dive. And then eventually the author goes out. There's some kind of, I think it's called ecotourism off the coast of Mexico, where everybody goes and they get to go and look at sea creatures and whatnot. They have, of course, a Mexican guide take them to the hot spots. I mean, I've been a tourist myself, so not undersea to be sure, but I've had those experiences. And In her case, well, she multiple times throughout the book, while she was learning, and then afterwards, she has had some ear troubles, and so there's pages and pages about what it's like to have ear pain, and I am a champion at that. I think I was in my 20s when my eardrums both broke a couple of times, and then every 10 or 15 years since I've had trouble. So I've had a little experience with ear pains, and it's not something that I really need to read about. So Karen, as I called her, reports all of these things in great detail. There are a few octopuses, and she points out that's the correct pluralization of the word because it's a Greek term, so you can't pluralize Greek terms in the Latin way. There are a few octopuses in the couple of aquariums that she comes to know, so to speak, and what they do in the course of their lives. I mean, she refers to them as her friends. It's really not super clear that any kind of bond of friendship existed, but it's a conceit that I think we might as well go with. And of course, you have scenes where the animal in question then dies. You do get a sense of the hubris of humankind managing all these lives. So the one octopus dies because of it was decided to move the octopus to another container, which is always fraught. The octopus dies, but then via email and FedEx within a week or something, the procurers have another one on the way. So you realize there are these huge systems of octopus procurers and sea life procurers out there taking these animals to serve human whims or legitimate ends, if you believe that ripping these animals from their native habitat so that school children can gawk at them in the zoo is a reasonable thing. And I can understand the argument either way. I mean, now I would say that I'm not sure how long it took me to read this book, excuse me, but I would advise, if it is possible for you to do so, invest the amount of time that you would have spent reading this book and go to an aquarium. I've been to a good number of aquariums in my life, and this book actually will make me appreciate them a lot more. So I'm not totally condemning the book. I will be looking at things slightly differently now, although for me, usually when I'm at the aquarium and then there's the entire sixth grade class of Mrs. So-and-so hogging the front view, I tend to want to go to a different exhibit. I'm not so interested in what children have to say about octopuses in the aquarium. But Cy Montgomery likes to report all of that, as I say. I might have other thoughts about this, but as I said, my experience is kind of negative, and I don't see any reason to drag it on. This book, ultimately, I, in retrospect, think it is a much better book. In fact, the first 5 chapters of this are useless, but chapter 6 becomes interesting, and Peter Godfrey-Smith is mentioned in that chapter, and he is really thinking about octopus and cephalopod consciousness in a serious and critical way. This author does not do that. I will leave that there. And I'm not really sure what I'm doing with this channel at this point. I am trying to record or leave a record of what is going on with my reading and my project of learning to become a better reader. Reading natural science is, I think, something to stay with me now. This book and the Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake have really changed my whole way of thinking about a lot of things, and so I do plan to continue that. That is my first 4 books of reading in the year 2024. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.